What are some of the most common mistakes that parents make when it comes to back to school shopping?
Well, Lianne, I'm glad you asked me that because I think for most parents, and certainly the MasterCard survey reinforces this, it's a very stressful experience. 2 out of 3 back to school shoppers find this exceptionally stressful, and they're going to spend up to 5 hours doing it. So, what kind of mistakes can we avoid when we start thinking about back to school shopping? First thing most parents don't do is they don't sit down and make a budget. Because without a budget, as you and I both know, you're more likely to blow your budget if you don't know what your budget is in the first place. So set a budget, and secondly, make a list. Make a list of the things you actually need, and ideally do this with your children. They're a great source to tell you whether it's a small child, whether it's a child in high school, or whether you have a student going back to university, because their requirements are all totally different, and you really need to sit down with them and talk about the realities of how much money there is to spend, and then how far is that money going to go with the things that have to be purchased. So those two basic things, and let's face it, that's common sense, but I think too often most of us just kind of rush off in a hurry because we've only got so much time and we've got to get it done, and you just start blindly purchasing, and chances are you're buying something that A, you don't need, or maybe a duplicate, and you're going to end up with a return trip back. So start with a budget and a list. Now, I know you must be going back to school shopping because you've got, is it 3 boys?
I've got 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and I know what you're talking about. And it's a funny thing because just on that point about sitting down with your kids, it's not something you can do very quickly because now you're talking about looking at what they have already. Because I know I've done this many times over the years, is buy stuff that they already have. Because you get in there and you get sucked in with all the bright lights and bright colors. And, it's hard to say no.
It's very hard to say no. And that's another thing. Ideally, if you can shop without your children, it's a lot easier to resist those impulsive buys when you don't have children saying, but mommy, I really need those sparkly crayons. So if you can, shop solo, swap babysitting if your children are young with a friend who also has to do back to school shopping, and you'll be a lot more efficient, and frankly, you'll both have a much better time.
And it's interesting because what age would you then suggest that you take them with you?
I think it's not so much the age as it is what you're purchasing. If you need to buy clothes, that's always tough, and it doesn't matter whether you've got a kid going to university or a kid starting kindergarten. You really need to make sure that it's something that A, fits, B, is suitable, and C, that they actually like. So it's not so much the age, I think it's what you're buying. But if you have small children, and by small I mean probably 8 or under, I would suggest, if possible, leaving them at home.
I mean, different schools operate differently, but that you wait for that list from the school to come home, or that you try to be proactive and get some of that shopping done before the list comes home of what they need?
I think you do a little of both. There's some basics that you always know you're going to need, and you can do that ahead of time. But I would also wait for that first week of school when there may be some specifics that have to do with projects or a specific course, so that you haven't blown your entire budget and then realize you've got yet more things to buy.
Now, the back to school season is one of the most competitive when it comes to retailers. How can one go about making sure that they're not getting ripped off? It's probably a good way, because they're all, basically selling the same things, for a few pennies less here and there.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things you can do, and one of them is to use the internet resources. Go online and check the retailers to see what their specials are. As you say, a lot of them sell exactly the same thing, but if you can find a deal at one of them that's reasonably close to you, why not take advantage of the specials? Check the flyers, both online and offline, because you may find some coupons, you may find some money-saving deals, you may find one of those, if you spend X number of dollars, we'll give you a $10 card to use on your next visit. Those kinds of things really help. They take a little bit of time, but if you do your research up front, at least you are certain that you are not, as you say, paying more than you need to for an item. One of the things that the MasterCard survey indicated is that 2 out of 3 of us are just absolutely incensed by long lineups, and that creates a lot of the stress as well. So, a couple of things. Shop early in the week. The stores are not as busy. If you can avoid some of the big box retailers, you may find that the smaller shops offer as good a price and perhaps better service. And certainly if you have a MasterCard PayPass enabled credit card, they're terrific because you just tap, secure payment, and go.
What kind of trends, if any, are you seeing in the back to school shopping world today?
Well, one of the trends I'm noticing is that every time I open a newspaper, it's telling me that retailers are really sharpening their pencil this year for the back to school. And I mean that quite literally, in that they're dropping some prices, they're trying to be competitive, they want your shopping dollar. They know most of us have had a tough time over the past couple of years with the recession and everything that's gone on. So I think what you're going to see is better prices this year than you have in prior years. I always talk about what I call my gift closet, and back to school shopping is no different. If you can buy some of these things at a sale price earlier, then stash them away in wherever you keep your gifts or your extras, and you'll save money, and you'll also save a tremendous amount of time.
Now, you've been giving people advice on how to save money when they're shopping for many, many years. And
Yes.
it just seems to me that you'd have such an interesting perspective on the whole world, the wild world of retail. What are some general tips that you can offer parents, certainly who are conscious about spending money these days, on how to save money on an ongoing basis?
Well, I would suggest that parents use the resources at hand. Websites such as yours are a great resource for parents. Websites such as mine at shoestringshopping.com tell parents, and everybody else for that matter, where the latest sales are, where the warehouse sales are, where the bargain events are, where the bankruptcies are. At any given time on my website, I have such a wide variety of sales at any time that it's almost impossible not to find something that fits your requirements. So take advantage of those kinds of sales. You don't have to always go and pay full price at a retail store. You'd be amazed how many warehouse sales go on where you really can pick up some terrific buys without having to go across the border, which I think a lot of people feel they need to do. And no question, there are some good deals to be had if you're traveling across the border, but you still have to keep in mind that you're spending money on gas. There's long waits at the border. You will pay duty. There are GST and PST on the way back in. So you just have to be careful what really constitutes a savings if you're going to travel to the US. And I've been a committed bargain shopper ever since my Scottish frugal mother set me on that path. So I've always enjoyed shopping as long as I feel I've done my research and I'm getting a bargain. So back to school shopping is no different. I was always pretty careful about where I spent my money.
Do you think, because there was a time where, coupon clippers and even bargain hunters, it didn't seem to be sort of in vogue, for lack of better terminology.
Yes.
Do you think that that ideology or that stereotype has changed?
I do think that stereotype has changed. Back in the day when I first started writing about warehouse sales, it was something you kept very closely guarded. You didn't want people to know that you'd been to this warehouse sale and bought something for less than retail price. It was a secret. There was almost something shameful about shopping at a warehouse sale. And then various recessions have hit and the consumer has become much better educated. And along with that has the stereotype of the warehouse sale or the bargain shopping has gone out the window. So now you proudly say, gee, look what I got for half the price or a third of the price. And it's almost a badge of honor. So I totally think that the stigma is gone. And we all recognize that you can't be foolish with your money. It's a precious commodity. It only goes so far. And with everything, including back to school shopping, you need to be careful what you're spending it on.